Good morning, everybody. Back again with another fresh one here, another fresh installment. Continuing the coverage of Game 11 of the World Chess Championship. And we are drawing closer towards the end, which is Game 14 if the players are still tied at 7-7. And if they draw the last one, it's Game 14, 7.5 each. Or 7 each, sorry. 6.5 by Game 13 going into Game 14. And if they draw, it's 7 each. That's if they get there. The players are currently on a score of 5 all after 10 rounds. And in this game, Gukesh had the white pieces. And we'll see what happened if they're still equal or if one of them eventually breaks the deadlock. So then, Gukesh then starts with 1-3. Thereafter, which is the reti, we have d5 by ding. After d5, we have c4 and d4. So here already we thought Ding might go for something more solid with perhaps c6 or e6. But Ding is signaling, no, I'm fighting, I'm going d4. I want to occupy more space in the center here. So ideas then would be of Gukesh maybe going d3 and Ding c5, or later maybe even e5. We have b4 then, and Gukesh plays what's known as the Blumenfeld gambit, which is the first time he's played this in his professional career. Must be noted, right? And basically, what the Blumenfeld gambit is trying to do is just take up space in the center. It could eventually become a gambit, right? Where you're gambiting the b pawn to get space, where Ding would just try and take over the center. After b4, we have c5, then Ding's challenging the center immediately, and Gukesh goes e3. Correct here is to go d takes e and f takes e, and then just capturing c takes b, getting rid of these pawns. And then after c takes b, Gukesh would then thrust in the center. And this is the idea then behind the Blumenfeld. You're giving up the b pawn to divert the c pawn and push for the d file. All right, but that does not happen. After e3, we have knight to f6. After knight f6, a3 then. And this is a position that Erigaisi has played not too long ago, and you could then see the influence here. Kukishin said no, he has seen Erigaisi play this before, so obviously then looked at it, right? And Ding also had this not too long ago as well. I think 2021 against Adiban Vaskaran, also a top player from India. And to g4, just trying to put pressure on this knight here. Thereafter, we have e takes d, c takes d, and h3. So players playing the precise moves here. After h3, we have bishop takes on h3 and queen captures on f3. All right, the valuation is slightly better for white at this moment. We have the queen targeting on b7, and we'll see how important this diagonal becomes or comes later as the game progresses, right? We have queen takes f3 and queen to c7. Queen c7 is just perhaps then to develop the queen and to keep an eye maybe on this pawn and developing the knight as well. And perhaps to queenside castle or to maybe swing the rook to d8. D3 then, Gukesh just solidifying. Perhaps better was c5, because after c5 you get a5. After a5, bishop to b5 check, and now I perhaps imagine knight c6 or knight to d7, knight b to d7, or you could go knight f to d7. I'd prefer knight b to d7. Yeah, okay, bishop b2, and okay, now e5. And yes, it's slightly better. If you take it, it's not a problem. You'll just capture with the d knight, the f knight, and black stands slightly better in that position. So going back then to d3, we have a5 by Ding. Ding playing the most precise move. Yeah, if captures you, of course, you just take with the rook. You could capture with the rook, perhaps, and just get some space there. Although objectively, yes, it's not the best move, but optically it looks good for black. The engine is suggesting just to go e6 and forget about this pawn. You could always capture later. There's no rush after knight to b, knight to d2. I imagine now, yes, you capture on a5 with ideas. Then after g3, you just go bishop e7. So let's say g3 or knight c6 first. Why not bishop e7? Yeah. And then knight b3 and you drop back to a6 or a8. Knight takes d4 and bishop to b4. And you're taking away white's castling abilities, because if you capture here, well, you just lose this rook, and that would be better for black. All right. So we can see after a5 we have b5. Objectively, yes, okay, black stands better, but optically, again, conceptually, it seems a bit easier to play with white. And this is the important concept here of these connected pawns and what they can pose, what problems they can pose going forward, as well as the queen on f3 and after g3 with the bishop connect. A lot of dilemmas and drama happening here on these files, because there's technically almost a half open b file, which will also be very important going forward. And on the other hand, if you look at Ding's side, Ding needs to ASAP develop his bishop, ASAP Rocky, quick, to develop and castle. Either e6 and bishop to d6 or c5, or even in this case b4, because as we discussed with that, a can't capture on b, and just castle and get the rook into play and the king out of the center. And before it's too late, right? So b5, b to d7, correct by Ding then, and now g3. Knight to c5, pressurizing here in the center, and bishop to d2. Now we have knight f to d7, rerouting the knight to come here to e5. Castles then, and knight to e5. And now even Gukesh stated here, he felt he was in a bit of trouble. He needs to play accurately and precisely here, and he does with queen to f4. So yeah, yes, you could capture. Well, not with the not with the e knight. Um, with the c knight. If you capture the e knight, you're just hanging your queen, right? And the game goes on. You'd have queen to e4, applying pressure there. And importantly here, you obviously cannot go knight to c6 because you just lose the pawn. You have to forget about this pawn and then go e6. It's important here to go e6 to develop the bishop out on this diagonal and not g6 to this diagonal, as the bishop would be misplaced. For example, after queen to e4, let's say we go g6. You'll see it's much better than for white in this setup. So here you have this, and that, and rook to b8, you just drop your bishop back to g2. So the valuation there would be plus 0.5. So if we went back, queen to e4 and e6, and this happened again, you now see that the valuation is equal and a tad better. Okay, it's 0.00. But after bishop to, let's say, g2 as advised earlier, now the evaluation is better for black, simply because the pawn was played to e6 and not g6. And the reason why is because the bishop is more in tune. It's more connected with the other pieces, and it's in the center, right? Compared to the h6 where it would have been played to g7, it's not doing much on that square, right? So this is the importance of to having played e6 after queen to e4. So if we go back then, queen f4, Ding decides to go rook d8. So we're discarding this whole variation totally. Rook to d8 and rook to d1. Um, yeah, the engine is suggesting knight to d2, just sacrificing the pawn. But the reason behind that is to trust for b6, and then after get soon after to get rook b1. These are the ideas. So knight to b2, e6. If you go b6, queen takes on b6, then again this doesn't work because of that. You're losing the knight. It has to go back to b8 to keep some advantage. If you go to d6, it's now slightly better for white because of knight e4, and you have a lot of problems here. If you capture here, of course, this does not work because queen to e4. There's too much pressure there, and the problem is this advanced pawn. You go knight to c6, trying to hold on. Now rook to b1, and positionally, you're just getting attacked. The rook's going to come to d5, the bishop will develop to f4, and the other rook will double on the B file. These are some ideas that you could expect here after A4 as well. So let's just say bishop to E7. You can start with rook to B5. Rook to B5, okay, you castle, you get your king to safety. You can play on both sides here of the board, of course. I don't think this would be too bad. Yeah, you're giving up another pawn, but you're getting compensation. Okay, it's some hectic lines here with rook h5, but you're getting play, and this is the importance. G6, and you swing back, but you're creating pockets and holes in black structure here, rook to d7. The thing is, black has to play a lot of obscure moves to keep advantage. The position's much simpler for white to play, and we'll see as the game progresses that this is the answer in the end, the simplicity of the position, and how it's easier for one side to play the most natural looking moves, despite the other side being slightly better. So rook to d1, Gukesh says, no, I'm going to hold on to the d3 pawn, and we have g6. Now, g6 is a bit questionable because after g6 we get a4. Now the bishop's moving out. The reason for g6 is to fianchetto to the bishop, either to g7 or h6. But now there's this after a4, the reason behind a4 is the bishop to a3 coming in to put pressure on this knight. If e6 was played, the bishop would stay defending the knight on c5. But now, after h5, the reason h5 is played is to allow bishop to h6 to attack the queen and get some sort of tempi. We have b6, and now the attack's coming strong. Queen to d6, bishop to a3. So we see this knight's attacked and this knight's attacked. All right, although this knight's not in grave danger, um, but nonetheless, there is pressure. This knight's under pressure, this knight's under some pressure, and it's all leading to the queen. And the queen is known as the weakest defender. This is one of the first rules I'd learned in my first chess book by David Levins, titled "How to Play Chess." Uh, the English master stated that the queens, although they're worth the most in points, are the weakest defenders, and this game might just be an example of that. How the queen has to do all this defending work alone could just be a downfall or lead to a downfall. Okay, bishop to attacking the queen on f4. Bishop takes on c5. Gukesh says, okay, let's go for maybe queen trades. Yes, Ding can capture on, he could capture on f4, but then he'd just lose, be a piece down technically. For example, takes, takes, and now e takes d, and now we have g takes f. And if you look at the pawn, the piece count 1, 2 minus versus 1 minor, and just the board scattered full of pawns, and it looks bad. Plus the advanced b pawn, bishop's attacking on b7 is just bad for 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 black there. So bishop takes c5. We have queen takes on c5, and now we have queen to e4, eyeing this pawn on b7. Ding just drops back, and there is solidity now. Ding is fine here so far, but now we reach move 20, and it must be noted that Ding had spent so much time reaching this position, as well as Gukesh. There was a moment Ding spent an hour thinking, Gukesh spent 40 minutes thinking, and eventually by move 2021, the clock's balanced out. But as the game progresses from here on out, Ding's the one that goes under more severe time pressure. So knight a3 occurs, and now rook to d7. Perhaps you should have just castled and continued playing, doubling your rooks on the d afterwards by castling first, because now knight a3 and rook d7, this gives Gukesh some initiative to swing the knight to c2, and this looked a bit obscure, as didn't really commentators didn't really understand what's the reasoning behind this. Was it to try and put pressure on d4? Well, that couldn't work in itself because there's sufficient defense on d4, right? But we'll find out why Gukesh played this knight a3 to c2 sequence, because after knight to c2 we have queen takes b6, still correct by Ding. Rook a to b1. As mentioned earlier, that b6 thrust when the queen was on c7. After giving up this pawn, because the Ding is up a pawn temporarily, Gukesh gets a very important concept that we call space and development for his pieces. So now rook to b1 comes with a tempi. Queen to c7, rook to b5 as discussed earlier on, just a different sequence now. There's pressure on b7, there's pressure on a5. There's even pressure on c6. And this king needs to get into safety as soon as possible. And which Ding does. Castles, and now knight to a1. And before knight to a1, the clocks were about even. 14 minutes for Ding, 17 for Gukesh, I believe. But after knight to a1, this is when I saw this, I thought to myself, yeah, now Ding's gonna burn a lot of time because it's a very obscure, strange looking move. Gukesh Ding was expecting rook to b1, rook d to b1, and then he would just move the either just double up or move the queen away. So if rook d to b1, that's okay. You would just go rook to b8, yes, and you just continue defending. It looks bad for black, but this is a more natural sequence, right? But knight to a1, and the reason behind knight to a1 is to go knight b3 and simply knight to c5, just put more pressure there. Knight to a1, and here Ding spent like 10, 11 minutes, and he was down to 6, 7 minutes on the clock. Knight rook to b8 still played. Um, But the best move is rook to d6 here, which is obviously very tricky to find in such time pressure. Rook to b8, knight to b3, and now e6. The reason for e6 is now to drop the bishop back to f8 to somehow defend on c5. But Gukesh is just one move too quick. And after knight c5, we have rook to e7, which is the top move. You can't if you go rook to d6 here. Okay, yes, it's one and the same, but then you're just doubling up. The reason is being you're going to lose this pawn eventually. But at least if you lose it in this sequence, you still have something to hold on to. Not much, but you could fight. But rook to e7 was then played. And now the top move here is knight to b7, capturing on b7 and just locking down. So knight to b7, knight to b4, and then queen takes d4, and you're just collecting your pawns again, and you up a pawn after bishop g7. You're just praying and hoping for the best here and finding a defense. You need to find moves like king h7, which is really hard. Knight e2 looks more natural, of course, but after queen d2, it's really uncomfortable to play, especially when you're down to your last minutes on the clock. But this was not followed after rook to e7, rook d to b1's played, also the most natural looking move and the most flowing move, although objectively it drops advantage a bit, but still, white would enjoy this position any day. Give this position to any top player, they're preferring white here. All right, rook d to b1, and now queen to c8, the ultimate blunder. And now Gukesh spots the winning tactic in a few seconds. And after queen to c8 was played, now Ding realized this big blunder, and Gukesh is captured on c6. And in this position on move 29, Ding Liren resigned the game. And the reason being, after this beautiful queen sack temporarily, if you capture with the b pawn, well, you just losing your queen and you're down a piece because you cannot move. If you go here, well, you're still capturing regardless. And if you look at that now, white's up a clean piece, and that's at this level. You don't still continue that because it's lost. If you go queen takes, well, not a problem, just bishop takes. See this importance of this g file with the unsettled bishop, the importance of the h1a diagonal in this game. Because now if you capture the same story, it's even worse um for black here. So yeah, after queen c6 we saw Ding crumbling, queen c8 I mean Ding crumbling, and Gukesh spotted it instantly. And just the overall great game by Gukesh. This knight a1 maneuver was really the knockout, because it looks as if it doesn't cause any harm, right? It looks like it's a softish move, not a softish move, but how do I describe this? It's an innocuous move, right? Knight to a1, you go into the room, you're gonna lose more time by playing. So after knight to a1, then knight to b3. Yeah, and Ding was just a move or two too slow. And some small positional errors in this game was this g6, bishop h6 move. And Ding realized it in the press conference. So he said he should have went e6 early on. And all this would have been prevented because the bishop would have been on e7, most likely, or d6. And this knight c5 would have never happened. Because if it did, you would have just chopped it off. And who knows how the game could have went. Because Ding had his chances too in this game. He played the opening very well, but just got too caught up with some positional errors. And Gukesh really capitalized with this a4 push, bishop a3, knight a4, knight a3, knight c2, knight a1, knight b3, and knight c5 ideas. The rooks doubling up on the b eventually. The queen coming to f3. Just a beautiful game, exerting a lot of pressure. So there are 3 rounds left. The score is now 6 for Gukesh and 5 for Ding. Can Ding bounce back? The first one to 7 wins the world champion. There's only 3 games left. Ding Liren needs to come out swinging. Ding will have the white pieces tomorrow, and we'll see how it goes. So, guys, stay tuned and thank you for watching. Take care.